Hello Intelligent Automation community, and welcome back to this third video on the little series I'm doing on robotic process automation in the cloud.
More clouds.
If you haven't watched the first two videos in this series, and if I finally figured out YouTube, you should be able to see links to those videos up somewhere about right there. In part one, I covered the 3 deployment options if you have an RPA technology already selected and want to manage that on your selected cloud platform. So moving your RPA technology to AWS or Azure. In part 2, I went into the architectural differences between RPA cloud packages that are directly offered and sort of hosted by the 3 leading RPA vendors. The third approach, which is the focus of this video, is to work with a third-party robotics-as-a-service provider. These are providers that can host and manage both automation and cognitive solutions for you. And then they tend to bring in a layer of delivery, build, and training services. This brings in RaaS providers such as Digital Workforce, project hosts for the US government, and Invoke. And unlike previous videos where you're just hearing me speak most of the time, in this video, Johnny Ramondino, the president of Invoke, is going to directly share why a robotics-as-a-service approach might be a great fit. This video was filmed on February 15th between rolling blackouts down here in Texas, so I unfortunately had to piece together segments of Johnny and I's conversation throughout the day. But unlike the second video where visual aids were critical, this is a bit more like a podcast. It's 25 minutes, but if you just throw in some earbuds, there's no reason to be glued to a screen. Also, on the subject of weather and blackouts in Texas last week, these battery backups from Blue Prism World a couple years ago ended up coming in extremely handy, and I would really like to thank the VP Events team for letting me snag a few extra of these a few years back. On a related note, Blue Prism World 2021 starts on May 18th, and registration is now open. I'll post a link so that you can learn more and register down below. Now, in the first two videos, I was focused on cloud from an architecture perspective. And when you consider a robotics-as-a-service provider, you're getting an architecture model that typically resembles what I showed in the last video around Blue Prism Cloud. Also, with a third-party RaaS offering, or Blue Prism Cloud for that matter, you have to keep in mind that these providers configure, tune, and service their platforms to deliver peak performance. Now, Johnny will tell you about Invoke, but a lot of my direct experience in this area comes from Thoughtonomy, which was a third-party robotics-as-a-service provider prior to becoming acquired, eventually becoming Blue Prism Cloud. Thoughtonomy was first built to be Blue Prism on Azure for a subscription fee. Then they built in-house technologies around that platform like Hub, IATA, and Interact, which you'll now see some of those on-premise with Blue Prism. And they also paired third-party cognitive technologies to extend the platform into more intelligent automation. In parallel to all of this, Thoughtonomy spent 7 years tuning how everything worked together. They were able to control every little bit of the platform and optimize it. And as a customer of a Blue Prism Cloud, Invoke, or any of the other robotics-as-a-service providers, you're able to move from full speed on day one because somebody else has already invested the time and made the mistakes and put in those hours to create a high-performing, optimized platform for you. And there's a lot of lessons to learn around how to build a successful automation program, and I tend to personally trend towards learning firsthand, getting in the weeds, and potentially gaining a few scars, but frankly, foundational infrastructure is not where I would want to spend my time learning lessons. So that's enough pontificating for probably a couple videos. Let's jump into this and you can hear directly from Johnny. All right, so let's get into the content for today. Let's start the stage with how you got into this space. So you started the RPA program at ADP, then you started an automation advisory and implementation firm, and then you expanded into a full robotics as a service practice. Why'd you make that last big jump there?
The reason why we started Robotics as a Service was because we were working with our customers and we were realizing that throughout the journey, at the start, during implementation, or as you started to scale, a number of hurdles occurred in that process. Those could be technical, those could be organizational, all sorts of things came to light. And so we looked at this and said, how can we just make it super easy for organizations to automate? How can we make that very simple? How do we take away every single hurdle that may come up? And that's really the premise of why we started Robotics as a Service. And we geared our solution suite completely around simplifying the process of implementation, adoption, and rollout.
Great. So you caught the first two videos I did in this little series about RPA in the cloud. And in the second video, I hammered on the point where each RPA vendor has a different interpretation of the phrase, no infrastructure costs. I didn't know there could be different interpretations of that, but there are apparently. So when you talk about Invoke's Robotics as a Service, do you host all of the RPA infrastructure or just the orchestration components?
So yes, we host and manage the infrastructure of RPA, which includes the database, the application server or orchestrator, and we also manage the virtual machines or the robots themselves. We also take one step further in that we manage the images of those robots as well. And we do that specifically because it allows us to think about scaling those machines and also automating the support around those machines in another level and extension that otherwise are hard to accomplish. Now we do that for RPA and actually multiple RPA solutions. And we also do that for multiple cognitive tools, right? And we already have, I think, 4 OCR solutions in there, 2 AI solutions, and so on, that all of that RaaS solution embeds and encompasses, and we manage all of that. So that makes it very easy for organizations to be able to adopt new technology and be able to have this centralized approach around communication between the intelligent automation technology stack. Now, we offer our solution in multiple deployment options, meaning we offer that in AWS, in Azure, and we also have a Fedramp solution available for customers that require that.
Okay, so if I heard right, you host the runtime resources, the application servers, and the database server close together, all in the same data center, right?
That is correct. So we do all of that, and then on top of it, the images of the robots themselves, we maintain those as well. And we do that specifically so that when we think about later on automating a lot of the spinning up and down of the machines and making sure that we can support or recognize when support is needed, we can automate a lot of those support functions because we control that entire stack. Taking that a step further, we also not only do that for Blue Prism RPA, we allow that for multiple RPA solutions as well. So customers have the ability to use particular RPA solutions for different use cases that may be more suitable for that. In addition to that, we do the same for other cognitive solutions like OCR, like machine learning and AI, NLP, and so forth. Right? So we already have, I believe, 4 integrated solutions for OCR and 2 AI data modeling solutions built in. And so going back to this concept of what is all within that data center and how can you make sure that it kind of all coherently comes together, a number of things really are facilitated when you think about those solutions being managed all in that central Robotics as a Service environment. The first element that you alluded to before was, all of that data exposure and the round trips and the speed of execution being in a central environment makes that a lot easier. The second part is that it's all within the same security framework and managed service environment. So as a result of being able to take a look at any type of solution and quickly try it out for a use case, or specifically having different solutions for different use cases available, becomes a lot easier. To take a small example, sometimes you need a specific OCR solution for OCR handwriting recognition, and what can happen there is that somebody has to stop, has to go and figure out what solutions are on the market, has to procure that solution, and now we're 3 to 4 months further in a good scenario before you can start automating that. So tying that together into the solution, making sure that's available, making sure it's fully managed, making sure that it's within the same guardrails that we've contractually agreed upon, just makes it an easy choice for the customers to get going. And then the third element is that everything that we deploy in there is supported by us in the same level of support that we do for the RPA environments, and it is integrated into the user experience, so it's easy to deploy and use those technologies within user processes that we want to automate. So all of that, trying to tie that together from an overall solution standpoint. And then the last thing that I'll add to that, and that really ties into this flexibility, we think that this intelligent automation spectrum is growing continuously. And so it is oftentimes, a situation where the customer says, okay, well, I've got this other tool that is really good to solve this problem. Can we add that to our automation landscape? And our model around Robotics-as-a-Service allows us then to evaluate that and then bring that other technology for that particular customer into our managed service environment. So it really helps because we're acting at that point as their intelligent automation IT team, right, that really manages that and that does it under the same rigor, the same guardrails, the same best practices as any of the other tools that we're bringing in. And it's all about just removing the barriers again of being able to facilitate that automation.
So if I read back what I just heard, you have multiple different RPA platforms that you host, multiple different cognitive capabilities that you host, and I'll want to get into that a little bit more detail here in a second. And then I know we've talked about this before, but I believe you can also deliver on Fedramp. And so for folks that don't work in the government-related space, could you explain what Fedramp is to everyone else?
The Fedramp solution, I think, is particularly interesting because it highlights just how far cloud has come. We've seen a number of organizations that may not be cloud first, and we've seen other organizations that have hesitance to move their solutions to the cloud. And Fedramp, I think, demonstrates the importance, or at least kind of this level of certification that commercial organizations can take a look at. Because within Fedramp, in order for any federal government or specifically even the Department of Defense to use a solution, it needs to be Fedramp compliant, which means it has to have gone through all this rigor of security and governance for it to be able to be allowed to be used by those agencies. And what that says for the commercial space is that you can deploy cloud-based solutions in a secure environment, and you can check all the security and InfoSec and compliance questions and issues that you may have just as easily as you could do on premise. So I think that is a really good takeaway for the commercial space, that no matter what industry you have or what compliance requirements that you may have in front of you, there is a path to being able to manage that, right? If it's good enough for the DoD, we can certainly find a way for you to get an instance in the commercial space that checks all the security boxes. And it's one of the things that we're very proud of in our RaaS environment is that, when there are specific requirements, whether it is where the data is located, how it's being routed, or just what certifications you need, we will work with our clients to make sure that those things are met.
Okay, Johnny, so by using a robotics-as-a-service platform like Invoke, businesses can focus more on building new automations versus managing the day-to-day hardware platform. So does the RaaS model also have benefits around more flexible licensing and hardware consumption? I mean, the commercial side of the house.
Our solution absolutely is geared towards a consumption-based model as much as we humanly possible are able to do. Now, for the longest of time, a lot of solutions out in the market have already been consumption-based. RPA has been somewhat consumption-based. You can buy the license. You can add licenses as you need them, but you can't really fractionally buy licenses as you need some of those. So in our RaaS solution, we have added that. So we have added the ability for organizations to deal with these fractional needs of additional licenses whenever there's particularly peak demand situations happening. So you may have a one-time effort that's happening and you need a number of automation capacity that can help automate that, and then just destroy that army of robots that you just needed for a few days, and your project is finished. That type of work, whether it's seasonal, whether it's month end because of maybe financial closures, or whether it is for any project activity, is something that we allow our customers to benefit from, and so it allows them to not have to always own this this continuous robot license model when a lot of that capacity is not used on a day-to-day basis. So that's something that we have added to our platform.
So, in the first video in this whole RPA in the cloud series, I briefly mentioned the pairing of RPA software robots with cloud-based cognitive technology services to improve the skills of these RPA digital workers. So, for example, you could pair a natural language processing technology so that a software robot can parse sentences and understand the context of, say, emails or chat messages. You could take this a step further by extending, say, an interactive voice response solution, basically allowing the RPA bot to audibly speak with humans and kind of do all the back end pieces behind that IVR system. So now, one of the big differences between the traditional, say, Blue Prism enterprise offering that you'd typically find on premise or maybe in a bring your own cloud model versus, say, Blue Prism Cloud is that BP Cloud is pre-licensed and pre-deployed with curated selections of these third-party cloud cognitive technologies. So, for example, BP Cloud includes a natural language understanding technology, an advanced computer vision technology, and a series of channels like SMS communication. So, I guess getting over to my question now, I know Invoke offers cognitive technologies. You mentioned that previously, and you offer that through your Robotics-as-a-Service model. So if both Blue Prism Cloud and Invoke offer advanced cognitive technologies that are paired with their hosted RPA subscription model, is there a benefit of the Invoke offer that's specific to hosting these software robots with cognitive skills?
Is there a benefit of the cognitive services in a RaaS model versus Blue Prism Cloud? So Blue Prism Cloud has a model where it curates the solutions that it thinks are a good fit, and it provides those solutions as part of the suite, which is fantastic. I think it really allows customers to think of the model of saying, you have this purchase, you have these solutions, try to find a way to take advantage of them, and they're there for you whenever you need to and use them. So this kind of bundled purchasing approach, I think, helps with adoption and helps with the understanding that you have this capability available. Within our RaaS solution, we take a little bit of a different approach. It's more an element of, hey, these solutions are available for you to take advantage of, but we're not charging them to you if you don't need them or if you don't want to purchase them, right? And we also give you a variety of options on cognitive tools that you can take advantage of. And the variety of the tool set is actually important from our side of the fence because some tools are just better at particular use cases than others. And we want to make sure that you have the right tool set available, and we will extend that tool set if needed as well. And so it could be, over time that we add additional OCR solutions or AI solutions or NLP solutions, right, that maybe have pre-built use case value that could be driven. Or it could simply be that the customer says, hey, I need another automation stack, maybe a serverless Python component that they can use to run some certain scripts on, and we will add that to their robotics stack. So our approach is absolutely, you should get all these cognitive services, and we will offer them to you, but you only pay for what you use. And then on top of that, I think the other element that I think is valuable within our stack is that we don't look at it just from an infrastructure and licensing perspective. We also look at it from a user interface perspective. A lot of these processes, once you get beyond the simple activities and they string together a broader process automation, you really need to think about how the user interacts with that process. Right? Because you have now a broad process, sometimes spanning multiple departments that you're tying together with automation, and you need to figure out how am I involving approvals, exception management, or any sort of other retries or corrections that I need to deal with from the end user perspective. So what we try to do on our side is we provide a user experience for all the tools that we host and manage. so that when you roll out let's say an OCR solution, it's embedded within the case management approval system. Or when you try to roll out some sort of AI technology that's embedded in the process end-to-end to begin with. So that's really the difference between, I think, what you find in any of the RPA vendors, but specifically in terms of how we deal with this. We probably pre-mold some of that capability a little bit more. We pre-chew it for everybody so that it's a lot easier to consume, and we give you flexibility on what tools make sense to use.
And I think it's probably important to recognize, again, my perspective on a lot of this is I know Blue Prism very deep, so I'm comparing BP Enterprise to BP Cloud, so we're not crossing platforms on that side of things. You, of course, work with many different RPA technologies as well as different cognitive technologies. So a lot of this doesn't have to be specific to Blue Prism, pitch here. There is some general education on this. But, so Invoke is also, you're taking care of hosting the RPA platform, which we've clearly covered. You're taking care of managing the platform for customers. You're taking care of extending the RPA technology with additional cognitive solutions. And then you develop an integration layer that brings all of these various different bits together into a seamless user experience. Pretty cool. At the start of this video, I mentioned that your team had a background in advisory and implementation services before you got started into this whole Robotics-as-a-Service platform. Do you still offer those types of implementation services to scope and build automation, or are you primarily now shifting your focus to just the hosted platform market?
We are very proud of how we service our solution, and we think it's an integral part to removing a number of barriers to adoption and scale and ultimately time to value. So when you think about what we do as an organization, we, of course, yes, we implement solutions for customers, we support automations for customers, we advise and help incubate opportunities, and we help advise on the ROI that customers get from automating these processes. And so we do the same for customers that have a RaaS solution in the sense that all of that surrounding support is available to them. And that translates in a number of benefits, right? The first one is our customers oftentimes start out and they don't have all the skills available within their team. And so being able to lean on our services part of the business and our support side of the business, that professional services layer, they're able to fulfill some of those roles that they may not yet have within their team, right? Or it may just simply be that they're at a certain level on the technical adoption side. That could be on the RPA side or any of these additional cognitive services that you're trying to stitch together, and they get stuck or they need help or they at least want another person to help them through that process. And so now they can work with our solution architects and our developers in order to get an implementation across the line fast, right? And the third element is kind of that mentoring component. Oftentimes as customers get started and they start automating these things, there's an element of knowing the tool, but there's also an element of really thinking about best practice. And so the way we work on this usually is we start automating processes for our customers, and we take the people that are part of that customer automation team and we add them to our team, right? They're becoming part of our team. And so they get to learn how we automate, how our experts have been doing this for years, what their best practices are, how we really go from end to end in a process. And after a few of these engagements, they know how to run these projects themselves. And so we act as essentially the team until the internal customer suite is built up with enough capacity to run it themselves. And over time, we basically reduce the need on our side to support them. And the last part really is a little bit it's a really simple element, but very elegant, which is sometimes our customers just need to take a break, right? So people need to go on vacation. And again, it isn't always the case that customers have backup people available or with the right level of expertise or the right level of responsibility and role segregation, activity, and access. So they can just turn on support services from our side for a short period of time, make sure that there's somebody to take the phone call, to resolve an issue, to schedule a process, whatever may need to be the case, right? So those are all sorts of activities that we do within the support side. And we think, again, from an overall perspective, Whether you get started in your automation journey and you need maybe a lot of help from and expertise from somebody like us, or whether you're way down the line and you have your team built out, we see customers on both ends of that spectrum seeing a lot of value because it just reduces a lot of the hurdles along the way. And particularly when we go and look at stringing together multiple intelligent automation solutions, it becomes more and more complex to solution architect this and to troubleshoot these items. And so having, we call it the Invoke bat phone available whenever there's an issue, they can call us and we'll come in and we'll help people out. So that I think is absolutely a big value add.
Well, thanks, Johnny. And, oh, wait, hold on. We're getting interrupted here. Yes, Addie.
Daddy, do you want to know snowman with me?
Well, Johnny, it sounds like I need to get to work, and we're going to need to wrap up. I mentioned it's a big snow day outside. So I'm sure everyone will agree that it is great to hear directly from somebody who's delivering robotics as a service, because let's face it, I can only say so much before everybody listening catches on to the fact that I really have no clue what I'm talking about. I just say it with confidence. So thanks for being another voice in this little intelligent automation insider series that we're doing here. Where should anyone watching, if they wanted to learn more about Invoke's robotics as a service offering, where would they go to check that out?
Well, everybody can go directly to www.invokeinc.com, or we're, of course, available on the Blue Prism Digital Exchange as well. Thank you very much for having me as well. Thank you.
And for anybody watching, I'll post links to anything that we've discussed, including the Invoke offering, down in the first comment below, so check that out. Johnny, thanks again for sharing your insights. Thanks to everybody watching for tuning in, as always, and stay warm out there. Talk to you soon.